everything changed during what was supposed to be the happiest day of my son's life. It was the perfect wedding. Everything from the delicate ivory roses on the tables to the subtle sparkle of fairy lights wrapped around the garden was exactly how Sarah and I had planned it. She married my baby boy, Kevin, 28 years old, proud, intelligent, in love. I couldn't stop smiling. We'd spent months poring over every little detail, the menu, the guest list, the music. I was the proudest mother in the world, wearing my favorite navy blue dress and watching my son start a new chapter. It should have been a day I'd remember for love, family, and celebration. But it ended with a sentence that shattered 32 years of marriage in less than 10 seconds. "This is the end for us, Darlene. I've found someone new." That came from across the family table from Desmond, my husband of 3 decades, right there, in front of everyone, with a tone so flat, so practiced, it felt like he was reading off a script. At first, the sound of his fork tapping against the glass was just polite, like any other wedding toast. I expected him to raise a glass in honor of our son and daughter-in-law. I even leaned in, ready to smile. Kevin's face lit up, expecting a sentimental toast. So did Sarah's. The crowd hushed, 40 guests turning their heads to hear the man of the house speak. And then he dropped the bomb. The air drained out of the room. People froze mid-sip, forks were suspended inches from mouths, conversations died in real time. My sister Margaret gasped loud enough for the whole table to hear. Uncle James stopped his fishing story. Even the live quartet stumbled mid-song. And sitting across from me, her, Patricia, his 28-year-old secretary. She was younger than our son, the same age, and unapologetically dressed like she thought she was the bride. Fiery red dress, flawless waves in blonde hair, lips painted cruel crimson, and she smiled, raised her champagne like she was on The Bachelor, winning the final rose. Half the guests didn't even know who she was. That would change soon enough. I remember thinking, you planned this, both of you. They didn't just betray me in private, they brought their betrayal to the most sacred place possible, the wedding of their own flesh and blood, a final twist of the knife. And here's what they'll never forget. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't cause a scene. I did something far worse. I smiled. Tight, controlled, I calmly reached for my purse, unzipped it, and pulled out the manila envelope I'd been silently carrying for weeks. Then, without a word, I slid it across the linen-covered table, stopping just short of his hand. "Here," I said quietly, "something for you to read later." The room was still dead silent. Kevin blinked. Sarah clutched his hand like she was afraid he might get up and throw a punch. Desmond hesitated, then reached for the envelope. I didn't wait. I kissed my son on the forehead. "Congratulations, sweetheart," I whispered. And then in front of everyone, I stood tall, smoothed down my dress, turned away from the table, and walked straight out of the reception hall. I made it halfway to the parking lot before I heard him. That scream. Not a gasp, not a Darlene wait. No, it was a full-on bellow, a guttural sound full of rage, fear, and disbelief, like a man suddenly realizing the ground underneath him had cracked wide open. It echoed through every corner of that historic manor. And in that moment, I knew everything in my life had changed. Not just the end of a marriage, not just betrayal. It was something deeper, the moment when I stopped being the woman who sacrificed everything and became the woman who took it all back. They say hindsight is 20/20, but I don't believe that. Hindsight isn't a clear picture, it's a painful puzzle. Every missing piece finally clicks into place after it's too late to stop the damage. And sometimes when you look back, all you can think is, how did I not see it coming? Well, let me tell you, I did. I saw the signs, I just chose not to believe them. Let's rewind. Back to 1991, I was 26, full of ambition and heart, running a small catering business out of my apartment kitchen. Darlene's Delights, that was the name proudly printed on the first batch of flyers I handed out around town. People came from across the city for my grandmother's peach cobbler, for my mac and cheese that melted in your mouth, and for the Southern-style cornbread that had the church ladies gossiping in the best way. I was young, poor, passionate, and alive. All I needed was a little time, a little luck, and someone who believed in me. That's when Desmond walked into my life. Tall, polished, full of charm, he was an insurance adjuster who hired me to cater his company's holiday party. Afterwards, he told me he couldn't stop thinking about my chicken pot pie or about me. "You're going places," he said, looking at me like I held the stars in my hands. "Let's build something together." 6 months later, he proposed. No frills, no flash. Just a man with a modest diamond ring and a vision of forever. "We'll build our dreams together," he promised. And I believed him. The first sacrifice. 3 months into our engagement, Desmond got offered a promotion. Bigger city, better salary. But it meant leaving behind my clientele, my kitchen, my business. "It's just temporary," he said, cupping my cheeks with those soft, convincing hands. "Once we're settled, you can start fresh." That was the first time I shelved my dreams for the bigger picture. I sold my catering gear, hugged my regulars goodbye, packed up my dreams into cardboard boxes, fully expecting to unpack them later. But a later never came. The second sacrifice, motherhood. 2 years after we moved, Kevin was born. And somewhere between midnight feedings and preschool crafts, it became clear Desmond's career was the priority. "Let me handle work, you focus on the house and our boy," he'd say whenever I brought up restarting my business. "We need stability." And just like that, my business dreams became someday fantasies. Kevin needed me, Desmond needed me. And what did I need? I stopped asking that question. Year after year, I watched Desmond climb the ladder, promotions, new offices, nicer suits. And I told myself this was teamwork, this was love. When Kevin started school, I brought up catering again. Desmond smiled, distracted. "It's a lot of work, sweetheart. Wouldn't you rather relax, maybe take up a simpler hobby?" Instead, I went to work at First National Credit Union. A desk job, boring, predictable, but steady. It started as a stopgap. But years passed, decades even. And I became the woman who paid the bills, balanced the books, cleaned the messes, smiled through the silence. "You've got such a good man," people would say. And I'd smile and nod, like a woman reading a script in a play she didn't audition for. Behind every great man. Desmond wanted to start his own business 10 years ago, an insurance consulting firm with his name in bold black lettering on frosted glass. Guess who backed the business loan? Me. With my perfect credit, built on 20 years of budgeting and sacrifice. Guess who did his books late at night and didn't cash a dime for her labor? Me. Because when you love someone, you give. And I gave everything, my time, my trust, my talent, my 20s, my 30s, and most of my 40s. The subtle shift. It started with little things. Patricia Williams. 28, blonde, bright. Always in the background, answering phones, scheduling meetings, laughing a little too hard at Desmond's jokes. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. But I didn't want to become that woman, the one who's paranoid, insecure, always looking for signs of betrayal behind every calendar invite. Besides, what threat was a girl half our age? "She's just helping out at the office," he told me. "She admires your dedication, darling." I almost laughed at that line. She admired me. She didn't even know me. But I told myself to breathe, to trust him. I had trusted him for 32 years, why stop now? The forgotten wife. It wasn't until I suggested restarting my catering business that I saw just how far gone we were. Sitting across from him one quiet Tuesday night, I said, "Now that Kevin's graduated and the business is steady, I've been thinking, maybe it's time I reopened Darlene's Delights." He didn't even look up from his phone. "That's sweet," he replied, "but don't you think you're a bit old to be starting over?" He went back to texting. I could guess who was on the other end of that message. Something hollow opened in my chest that night. Not because of the insult, but because it finally hit me. This man didn't see me anymore. Not as a partner, not as a woman. Just a placeholder in the story of his success. And from that moment on, I started thinking differently. I began to listen more. Watch more. I used every skill I'd gained from 2 decades working in finance to track the truth he thought I'd never care to find. Because Desmond believed something dangerous. He thought I'd never fight back. He forgot who taught him how to build a life in the first place. He forgot who balanced the books, ran the numbers, cold called the investors. He forgot who made him. And I was done being erased. They say betrayal never happens by accident. It's planned. It's measured. And in most cases, it's hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone brave enough to start connecting the dots. And oh, did I start connecting. Because after that Tuesday night dinner, the one where Desmond called me too old to start over, something inside me woke up. Not in rage, not even in heartbreak, but in clarity. He thought he broke me. But all he did was set me free. It started with a credit card statement. I was organizing papers in our home office one Sunday afternoon, prepping for tax season like I always did. Everything in our finances had always run through me. After all, who better to manage things than a woman who's worked quietly in banking and finance for 2 decades? Among the usual stack of utility bills was a piece of mail just slightly out of place, a shiny, sleek envelope with Desmond's name only on it, a Chase Sapphire Reserve card, premium tier, one we'd never discussed, one he'd never mentioned. I should have let it go. Instead, I opened it, a Pandora's box of transaction history. There it was. $8,000 owed. A luxury skincare boutique I'd never set foot in. A 5-star hotel in Aspen, the same weekend he told me he was at a marketing convention in Chicago. Dinner dates at intimate steakhouses I'd never dined in. A purchase at a jewelry store called Bella S., coincidentally the same necklace Patricia wore to the office Christmas party. My hands shook, my throat closed. But my expression didn't change. Business expenses, he'd probably say. Client dinners, reimbursable stuff. But I knew better. I'd seen hundreds of financial lies walk through the bank over the years, always dressed as just work stuff. You learn to read between the charges. That night I asked him about it, calm, curious, controlled. Found a Chase card in the mail, didn't know we had that one. He barely looked up from his laptop. Business account, he answered, different tax bracket, our accountant set it up. And just like that, he gave me his practiced answer, knowing full well I'd been the one to handle that accountant for 20 years. Then he added the dagger. Don't worry about that kind of stuff, Darlene, you're still handling the home finances. I handle the business now. He thought that would shut me up. Instead, it fired my instincts into overdrive. Because Desmond didn't know what I was capable of. And now I had a reason to remember. The sandwich incident. 3 weeks later, I made a spur-of-the-moment decision. Desmond had forgotten his lunch, a turkey melt and coleslaw from his favorite deli. Normally, I'd just make note, let it go. But that day, I packed it anyway and drove 20 minutes to pop in at his office, the one I helped finance. Patricia's desk was empty. That in itself wasn't alarming, What was alarming were the sounds coming from behind Desmond's closed office door. Laughter. Not just any laughter, the kind that had undertones, familiarity, flirtation, intimacy. I froze, standing in his reception area, stomach rolling as the pieces clicked into place. I stood there for 5 long minutes, unable to move, sandwich in hand like some character in a breakup meme. When they finally emerged, brushing hands, red-faced with too much smiling, they stopped cold when they saw me. "Darlene, what a surprise," Desmond said, his voice one pitch too high. "So thoughtful," Patricia added, smoothing her skirt. "You're always thinking of him." But her smile didn't reach her eyes. And her lipstick smudged. I turned, left, said nothing. But inside, I was done wondering if I was being paranoid. This wasn't paranoia. This was confirmation. Desmond was cheating on me with his secretary, using our savings, our sacrifices, my life. I became somebody else. Not the wife, not the fixer, not the fool. Something shifted inside me that day, and I became the person everyone had always underestimated. The woman who sees everything and says nothing until it's too late for you. I started tracking everything. Every Friday late night, every meeting that ran long. I double-checked routes on his business trips, cross-checked locations with hotel chains, restaurant reservations. When he said he had a golf weekend with clients, I checked his GPS history synced to the family iPad. Spoiler, there was no golf. There was a weekend cabin with 1 booking, 2 people, and rose petals on the welcome package. Every time he came home worn down and smug, I documented. I had a growing folder now, not just screenshots but printouts, labeled accounts, color-coded spreadsheets. Photos of them checking into hotels. Receipts for client dinners that matched romance package menus. Transfers from our joint savings account, small enough to fly under the radar, going into an account I didn't recognize. But I had decades of training, I traced it. Desmond Johnson and Patricia Williams' joint account, opened 18 months ago, holding over $40,000. All of it our money. He took what we saved for retirement and used it to start a new life without me. The day everything became clear. I sat in my car parked across from the bank, holding the manila folder that would eventually become Desmond's downfall. On my lap were 32 years of marriage, all unraveling in black and white proof. There were no more doubts, no more maybe I'm overthinking. I knew who he was now. And I knew who I was becoming. Desmond thought he was smarter. Thought that the loyal wife never fights back. What he forgot. I wasn't just a wife, I was the weapon he taught how to use money, data, and detail. And now I was going to return the lesson. Not with a scream, not with drama, but with precision. Desmond thought he was the puppet master. He thought he was going to humiliate me on our son's wedding day, in front of family, friends, and the life we built together. He wanted the drama, the shock, the applause. He just didn't know the scene he was preparing wasn't his to control anymore. Because the script had changed. And this time, I was the writer. A month before Kevin's wedding, I officially stopped being married in my heart. I hadn't told anyone yet, not Kevin, not Margaret, not even my reflection in the mirror. Because I was planning something impossible to ignore, something so precise it would land like thunder while I stood calm in the eye of the storm. But to make this plan work, I needed help. And I knew just who to call. Step 1, dialing a ghost from college. Her name was Sarah Martinez. No, not my daughter-in-law. My best friend from undergrad. We hadn't seen each other in years. Life, motherhood, and distance had drifted us apart, but we'd stayed loosely connected on Facebook, enough that I knew she'd become a high-powered family attorney focusing on high-asset divorces. So I called her. "Hey, it's Darlene." "Darlene," she said, stunned. "What's going on? It's been forever." "Yeah," I hesitated. "I need a lawyer and I need confidentiality." There was a pause, then came her serious tone, that click of professionalism snapping into place. "Come to my office, bring everything." She didn't ask what happened. She already knew someone had betrayed me. Step 2, weaponizing the prenup. When Desmond and I got engaged, he insisted on signing a prenuptial agreement. He'd been burned once before, a first marriage that ended in financial hell, so he wanted to protect his assets. "It's nothing personal," he'd told me. "It protects both of us, just smart planning." I was young, in love, naive. I signed it without blinking. 32 years later, I dug it out of our fireproof file cabinet while looking for old tax documents. Tucked in between paperwork for Kevin's college fund and the deed to our house, there it was. Yellowed with age. 32 pages of fine print. Sarah flipped through them calmly at her office downtown. Her eyes scanned page by page until she stopped and smiled. "Darlene, do you realize what's in here?" "Other than my potential doom," I joked nervously. She leaned forward, tapping a highlighted section. This clause right here." My heart nearly stopped. She was pointing to something called a faithfulness provision. "Desmond included this," Sarah said. "It voids his financial protections if he commits adultery." "Meaning?" I asked. "Meaning if you can prove he cheated, it nukes the prenup. He loses everything he tried to protect: house, investments, business shares, retirement." "Wait, you're saying all the safeguards he built to protect himself die the moment we prove he slept with his secretary on your dime," she finished. "Exactly. He'd legally checkmated himself before he even started cheating." Step 3, evidence and execution. Sarah didn't waste time. "Darlene, you need to file first, quietly, before he knows anything, before he hides accounts, moves money, or plays the victim publicly." She gave me a list. Financial statements. Paper trail proving marital funds were used on an affair. Photo documentation. Proof of cohabitation with the other woman. Account statements showing stolen savings. I left her office that day feeling lit from inside with fire and ice at the same time. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't broken anymore. I was ready. Step 4, playing my role. The next 6 weeks before Kevin's wedding required the best performance of my life. I smiled. I made dinner. I packed Desmond's lunch with love notes inside it, because that's what I imagined the soon-to-be ex-wife of a narcissist would do. Every day I kissed him on the cheek and told him to work hard. Every night I documented more lies. When I caught a whiff of Patricia's perfume on his shirt, I complimented his cologne. When he mentioned staying late at the office, I asked if he needed me to drop off dinner again. And when he finally said the words I'd been waiting for, "Hey babe, I've decided to cover the cost of the wedding dinner. It's my gift to Kevin," I almost laughed out loud. He didn't realize he was about to pay for his own demise with his own greed, all while thinking he was performing the most generous act as the groom's father. He thought he was the ringmaster. But I was the one writing the script for the show. Step 5, the envelope. Inside that manila envelope, there was more than evidence. There was strategy, consequence, closure. Divorce petition filed and timestamped that morning. Bank documentation showing misappropriation of funds. Printed photos, hotel entries, kissed cheeks, shared apartment keys. Highlighted prenup clause, the piece of paper that voided everything he'd protected. And just in case he tried to call foul, I included 3 more sets already prepared to be couriered to his attorney, the court, and Sarah at the same time. Surgical, thorough, undeniable. The wedding table trap. 3 days before the wedding, Desmond made his final mistake. "You know, I was thinking," he said casually over dinner, "maybe we should invite Patricia to the reception. She's been with me since the start, she deserves it." I blinked, then smiled. Of course she should be there. Desmond paused, maybe expecting me to object, but when I didn't, the smile on his face told me everything. He was convinced I knew nothing. Perfect. Because while he was preparing his public betrayal, I was preparing the aftermath, the letter bomb that would detonate on his time, on his money, at his son's wedding. "You don't have to pull weeds when the weeds come to the garden by themselves," my grandmother once said. Turns out the garden was Kevin's wedding. And the weeds brought designer handbags and red lipstick. All I had to do was hand over the envelope, then walk away. The moment Desmond opened that manila envelope, I was already out the door. Not running, not weeping, just walking away, steady, calm, and in complete control for the first time in decades. Behind me, I could hear the tear of the paper. Then silence. Then a scream. One so full of rage, panic, and disbelief, it echoed through the Riverside Manor banquet hall like a wildfire crackling through dry brush. "Darlene, Darlene, what the hell is this?" Oh, now he wanted to talk. Through the looking glass. From the parking lot, I turned back toward the reception hall, calmly watching through the massive windows. 40 guests, family, lifelong friends, Desmond's business partners, Kevin's new in-laws, all frozen, watching the show he never expected to star in. Desmond stood hunched over the head table, manila folder open, evidence spread across the white linen like crime scene photographs. The color drained from his face. The champagne he'd just toasted with was abandoned, fizzing into spilled French linen. Right next to him, Patricia. In her expensive red dress, perfect curls, diamond earrings glinting under the chandeliers. I watched her lean forward, peeking over his shoulder. "What is that?" she asked aloud. Desmond didn't answer. He just stared at the page that voided his precious prenup. The one that said if he ever strayed, he'd lose everything. Public unraveling. Patricia reached for one of the printed bank statements. She read slowly, brows furrowing. Her lips parted. "Desmond, this says all the money you transferred to our account came from your marital account." More whispers, clinks as forks were dropped. Guests were picking up details now. Kevin was on his feet. Sarah looked frozen. Patricia's face twisted from confusion to disgust. "You told me she didn't work, that she had no idea what was going on, that the prenup covered you. You told me she wouldn't fight back." Desmond finally spoke, face sweaty and ghost pale. "She was never like this, she doesn't do this, she must have hired someone, a pie maybe, or. No, Desmond. She was always watching, you just never noticed." Patricia's voice snapped the last thread. "You idiot, you said she was too stupid to understand banking, now you've given her everything. The apartment, the car, the money. It's all in my name with your stolen funds." That was it. I saw the precise moment she realized she was Desmond's future anymore. She was collateral damage. Patricia grabbed her clutch, stepped back from the table and hissed, "I'm not going down with this ship." And just like that, she left. No speech. No loyalty. No love story. She walked right past guests, the catering staff, the cake cutter, and out the front door. The family breaks their silence. Desmond stood, shoulders sagged, tie crooked, holding a sheaf of legal papers he clearly hadn't read before signing them 32 years ago. Kevin stepped forward. "Dad, is it true?" The room was so quiet you could hear the tremble in Kevin's voice. "You cheated on Mom. You used her savings. You tried to blindside her at my wedding." Desmond didn't answer. He just looked around helplessly, waiting for anyone to come to his defense. Not a single person moved. Uncle James shook his head. My sister Margaret sat down, stunned. The guests who once applauded his perfect family man act now looked at him like a stranger. Kevin finally turned and said loud enough for all to hear. "You don't talk to my mom again unless she says you can. You understand? You come near her and I promise I'll ruin what's left of your business." Then he walked out toward me. Sarah followed, gently wrapping her arm around me. We didn't speak, didn't have to. Desmond had done all the talking. And now he got to stand alone in his mess. The aftermath, what happened after the wedding. The next morning, Desmond's inbox was likely flooded. His divorce lawyer, not a cheap one, letting him know the asset protections were void. Our bank freezing several accounts due to the theft investigation. His business partner demanding a buyout. And a very polite letter from Sarah Martinez informing him he just stepped on every landmine he helped plant himself. The cherry on the sundae. His mistress dumped him, his son disowned him, and the wedding guests shared everything both online and off. 6 months later, on what would have been our 33rd wedding anniversary, I was standing in the commercial kitchen of my own catering business. It's called Second Helping by Darlene. Because we all deserve second chances, especially from ourselves. Kevin and Sarah were my first official clients, hiring me to cater her firm's holiday party. Word spread like wildfire. Within 3 months, I had 6 full bookings, a part-time staff, and a glowing feature in a local magazine. Where is he now? Desmond now rents a 1-bedroom studio across town, his insurance business. After buyers backed out, mostly due to PR fallout, he was forced to sell it at a loss. Without my support, my business savvy, and my silence. Turns out, he couldn't maintain what he built on borrowed loyalty. As for Patricia, she's moved on. Rumor has it she's dating a surgeon and pretending she was never involved in that wedding scandal. The betrayals, the lies, the money, all vaporized. But me, I'm still here. Stronger, louder, free. Final thoughts to you from me. If you're watching this and someone once made you feel small while they built themselves an empire on your back. If someone underestimated your silence, mistook your grace for weakness, or believed you wouldn't fight back. Let me reassure you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting free. You don't have to destroy someone. You just need to walk away holding power they told you you'd never have. And build a life so beautiful they can't even look at it without burning. That's what I did. I became the story they told in hushed tones. Not the one who broke, but the one who rose. And if I did, so can you. If this story moved you, comment, I choose peace and power. Like and subscribe, it helps me keep writing stories like this. Tell me where you're listening from, I love seeing how far we've come together. Night a sweet ending. My grandmother always said, justice doesn't always come with a gavel. Sometimes it comes with dessert and a name on the door. Darlene's name is back on the recipe card. And this time, it's not going anywhere.